mapayantu mamangani vakpranaschakshu shrotamatra balmindriyani chasarvani sarvam brahma upanishadam mahabrahma nirakuryam mama brahma nirakaroda nirakaranamastva nirakaranam meastu taratmani nirate ya upanishatsu dharmaste mayi shantu te mayi shantu Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. May our bodies experience great health. May our life force flow unimpeded. May our minds expand in their capacity to know Brahman. For the Upanishads state that all existence is Brahman. Therefore, may we never forget Brahman. May Brahman never forget us. May there be no denial of Brahman ever by us, we who are dedicated to the realization of the Atman within. May all the divine qualities quoted in the Upanishads also reside within us. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidveshovahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. We are all present today, at least I hope we all are, both in form and formless, that is live streaming audience and those who are present here at our SRV ashram, to take in the second installment of what we're calling the Advaita of the Avatars. Last week we went through several charts that showed the radiant road to reality as far as Ramakrishna was concerned, and how the avatar, the word meaning that which descends, comes out of the supreme Brahman, or the non-dual state, or samadhi, or moksha, or mukti, Advaita, and descends into the body, associating with the body, and thereby bringing many blessings and much grace to the mass of humanity that is embodied here in many different conditions, many different states, some very poor, some very oppressed, some very laden with suffering. A lot of that we Westerners don't see. People write in and complain about the teachings in their life and how hard it is, but they don't really know what suffering is. They're lucky to have the teachings and to be able to sit with them and have some time to roll them over in their mind. Manana. Manas means mind. So to use that mind to roll over these precious truths, according to Father of Yoga, Patanjali, will destroy suffering. It will not be present anymore. That which was a bee sting will just become a fly or a mosquito. It just diminishes pain. That beautiful condition of yoga. So many different conditions of people, the avatar comes down to help them all, as we said last week, to establish the new Dharma, to destroy parts of the old Dharma that have become outdated, and not useful anymore. Positive hampers, as Vivekananda said, those rules and laws of society that have become weights should be done away with right away, so that people can progress in all aspects of life, but of course spiritual life being, in our way of thinking and in his way of thinking, the most important of all. Seek thee first the kingdom of God, and all else will be added unto thee, as they say. So when such a great soul comes amongst us, he sees the different contingents of people, then his compassion is action. We were talking about that this morning in terms of what happens after you receive the Jnana Yoga teachings. It's supposed to do away with your ignorance. And does that mean you get the bliss of samadhi right away? Not necessarily, as we found out. We find out we have a choice. We can try and share it with others, and that's what Holy Mother compelled us to do, asked us to do. This is now that you have found Sri Ramakrishna and he has blessed you and you've taken refuge at his feet and mantra diksha into the order that you belong to, into the Dharma. Now, he said, your goal is already assured. Now, just on the way to the goal, it's a sure thing. Now turn and help others, she said, along the way. So the least you could do, as it were. So other people can try and bring that Vedantic wisdom into action, right into the very seva, and into the very karmas of human beings, and assist them in that way. All the time knowing that they can't be helped unless they want to be helped, as we were saying. And also that, for the main part, the person who is working in that regard is really knowing that it's helping himself. You help yourself to help others. It's kind of a rule of thumb. Especially if you know that there is just one self, and not many selves, as it appears to be, as Maya makes it seem to be. If you know there is just one self and you share that unanimity with other beings, then a look in the eyes is enough. A few words is enough to place you in a condition of empathy and sympathy, compassion, or, according to Vivekananda, higher than compassion is love, because compassion sometimes doesn't get down and roll up the sleeves and start working. It just feels empathy. But love, if you really love a person and love them as yourself, then you want to go and remove their suffering, because it is removing your own suffering, isn't it? Or as Vivekananda put it, I can't have moksha, liberation, until everyone is liberated. And that's also the Buddhist bodhisattva vow. I will take as many lifetimes as necessary to bring people out of suffering. What is really meant by that is bring them out of unnecessary suffering, because if you know the first noble truth of Buddha, you know that he said there is suffering. That kind of suffering you can't remove. They're already in the body. That means birth is a kind of suffering. Growth is a kind of suffering. Disease is a kind of suffering. Old age is a kind of suffering. Decay is a kind of suffering. And death is a kind of suffering. Holy Mother said, it's a very difficult proposition to be here in the body. Birth and death are very painful. I hope you never have to go through them again. So you can interpret that in two ways. One, just do not take a body anymore. Get done with all karmas and don't embody and stay in that disembodied state. Or it could mean get into yoga, and then when you're in the body, you won't feel pain and suffering to any great degree. Sri Ramakrishna described that like burnt ropes. You see, you burn a rope and you put it down there, it still looks like a rope, but one breath, and it falls apart. So it can't bind you anymore. So the kind of suffering that a person who is a deep practitioner or a master, an adept or a master, feels is kind of empathy, suffering with others. His own suffering is not a problem anymore. His mind is just not in the nerves. It's not on the flesh. It's not in the bone. It's not in the diabetes. It's not in the cancer. It's not in the pains. He draws his mind naturally toward the feet of Mother Kali, if you want to quote Sri Ramakrishna, and then that pain that's there, in the cancer of the throat or whatever it is, diminishes greatly. It falls to the backdrop, sort of like a headache or a toothache does when you put your mind on something. If you noticed, when you're not putting your mind on something and you're concentrating on the headache, it's worse. But if you take your mind and put it somewhere else, then you take away at least 50% of that. Maybe if you get fully concentrated, you take away most of it. And you don't feel it again until after you come out of concentration. So why not just stay in concentration all the time? One-pointedness, if thine eye be single, kind of state. So the avatars certainly epitomize that for us when they come. They've gone through horrible suffering, if you've seen. They've gone through crucifixions and poisoning and and cancer and various things. Their ends are not always pretty, quite often are a result of working with collective humanity, but they take them on so graciously, so nobly, and even makes one to think that, well, possibly there's not that much suffering there. As is the case with Ramakrishna on his deathbed, as they call it, when someone brushed against him and felt a thrill of joy. Here was a man who could hardly move his head from side to side because his body was so desecrated by the disease. And he just looked at the man and said, "You've discovered my secret, you rascal." In other words, my secret is my mind is always on the feet of my mother Kali, and it's not in the body. They asked him, "Don't you feel that? Isn't that painful?" And he said, "Only when I talk to you." So go away. Go away, I won't have to talk and I'll feel fine. But out of his compassion, he went ahead and spoke. It reminds us sort of like the Buddha, doesn't it, after he had nirvana under the bo tree, and he couldn't speak. He was speechless. He was in a state of not forced mauna or voluntary mauna. He was in a state of God had taken away his powers to speak because of this profound experience that he had called nirvana. We would call it nirvikalpa. Father of Yoga would call it a sampragyata. Whatever the case may be, he came down into his vocal cords again, into this chakra, you might say, to pronounce what he had experienced there. Thousands of years earlier, the ancient rishis had said, "Hear ye, O children of immortal bliss, I have found the truth." Made great statements like that and put them into the Upanishads, you see, so people could open them up wide-eyed and hear about the truth again. So the avatar descends in that way. We're giving a series of classes to that great being. Probably good that we did, because Sri Ramakrishna is considered by millions of people to be the most recent divine descent. And we should probably look at that, because after a great ship goes through the ocean, it leaves a wake of waves. Kids are even out there surfing it, if it's close enough to shore. It leaves such big waves. So that means when the avatar, the big ship of the avatar, goes through the ocean of the world, it leaves this tremendous wake of teachings, dharma, compassion, assistance of all kinds for different levels of people. There's not a soul like that around in relativity. Although there are many great souls, Avatar transcends them all. And because Avatar is working with so many levels of beings, sometimes it's not given the highest station. Those beings who are in some far-off transcendent Advaitic state are given all the awe and reverence, you see. But Avatar rolls up his sleeves and gets down there with love and works with all levels of being, even the evil. There have been many, many stories in the Ramayana and in the Itihasa and the Smriti of India, those great scriptures, secondary scriptures of India, about evil beings being transformed by coming in contact with Ishvara. And Ishvari, a divine mother, if she dispatches you on the battlefield, if you happen to be on the wrong side of the battlefield of her, and she dispatches you, then you get liberated through her action. Her touch alone, her seeing her on the battlefield, would probably be enough. So that's a great wonder, of course, something to be experienced in yourself. So when we talk about the Advaita of the avatars, then it caused me to think about how they would express themselves other than in action. They also express themselves in words, like these profound words. Now, here in Hawaii, I have shown you this chart before, so I'm not going to take it apart and go through it on a grand scale. Take an hour or so, because there are a couple new charts I want to show you that are fresher and will give us another side to this. But basically, Daivi Vak. Daivi means divine, Vak means speech, and the mother is the goddess of speech. Vak Devi is a name for Saraswati, who is the goddess of art and learning, goddess of the word. the word is a very profound station of consciousness, where deep within you, you can hear it yourself if you meditate. What is that great humming, like 1,000 bumblebees collected around a hive being the precious human being? See, what is that great humming I hear? It's the sound of 1,000 bees going in and out of Mother Kali's black hair. These big black bees are black. Mother's hair is black. Black has become one with black. I can't tell the difference anymore. It is when the soul enters that expanse of radiant blackness, the Devi Devi, then it merges there. Some souls want to come out of that merging and go back in, like the bees come in and out, because they have more fun separating and then getting in union again, you see. That's called sportive play, and masterful souls can do that. Souls that aren't so masterful, then don't try this at home, kids, because you might go out and then she, swifter than lightning, disappears, and you come back and where is she? And you're left in the lurch, as it were. So to always be one with her is a safer thing. So you might want to consider that in terms of what Holy Mother said. I hope you're never born again, because this body-mind mechanism or psychophysical being is separation from reality. Let's not make any bones about it. Very few people can hold a truly spiritual station and be in the body at the same time. It's as if meditation and action just will never come together. We've been proving, been trying and attempting to show how Jnanam and Bhakti come together in this series we just gave called The Devotion of Non-Separation. Devotion, Bhakti, Non-Separation, Advaita. But it's going to take a lot more effort to prove, or to try and prove, that meditation and action have anything to do with each other. There is, of course, meditation in action, but even that is not a sitting still, static meditation. Your body's moving, there's action taking place, the heart's beating, the lungs are pumping, and so forth. So if you ask somebody like Holy Mother, so do you always remember God? She'd say, no, how's that possible with all this work to do? So even the Divine Mother of the Universe, when she gets into the body, has told you that if you're having all this work to do, it's going to be very difficult for you to remember God, especially in the midst of action. So therefore you take a break. You see, you retire from action. It's called meditation practice, or study, which is a kind of mental action, obviously, but meditation, particularly formless, silent meditation, you should go into that at least once a day, maybe twice a day, teachers tell you, so that you always keep that balance between action and inaction. And by keeping that balance, there will come a time when maybe you can fuse them into a divine life. It's called dharmic life or divine life. But nevertheless, that formless Brahman is unique. We just chanted that. Apyayantu mamangani vak pranaschakshu. May the body be healthy, may the life force flow, may the mind expand, because Brahman doesn't expand. May the mind expand its capacity to know that Brahman, which will never expand, which is everywhere and all pervasive. And therefore, we can come to know the truth in this body-mind mechanism to the greatest extent we can while we're still breathing. So, all these words flowing at you, see, all these divine ideas, all this Jnana Yoga, but it can be summated in these great sayings. They're called Maha Vakyas. Maha Vakyas. Maha, the great, Vakya, words or sayings. And there are four main ones. Aham Brahmasmi, I think, is the most straight and to the point. There can be no doubt what they mean when they say Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. They're not saying I will be Brahman, or I was Brahman and I forgot it, or anything such as that. I am that. Now that's probably even more concise. I am that. So Tattvamasi, that thou art, is another one. And then this self is Brahman. Ayamatma Brahma. My mother, I taught her the Vedanta through the years of her older age while she was taking care of her mother. And I would make long trips in the plane and long drives out into the prairies of Wyoming to find her. at this remote place, and then I would read to her Vedanta every day, to both of them while my grandmother was still alive. I'd read them the Vedanta every night, the Gospel of Ramakrishna or Gita. And she got very taken up with it and decided she wanted to take that path. She was always a religious person. She went to church maybe once a year on Easter with my aunt. And so never was too busy raising children and family to really give herself to religion in the way that we're fortunate enough to do if we practice yoga. So she was very enamored of that, and she wasn't working as a nurse anymore. Her life was all service. She was a karma yogini type of person. So she started hearing this truth, the Jnana Yoga. And one of the other yogas, she said, I wish I had known that all my life. And I told her, yes, I wish you had too, because then you could have taught me earlier. Which is what we hope that will happen with people who hear it, that they will give it to their children. And that will be one of the greatest things to make a positive change in the world that you could do. Vivekananda has already said, that there's no knowledge like jnanam. Other knowledge satisfies for a little time, but jnanam will satisfy forever, because it'll remove your ignorance. So sometimes he would look at you, and if he really wanted to use the shock value teaching, he would look at you and say, I don't want you, and I don't want your son. I want your grandson. He's meaning he wants your children to get the teachings. He wants your children to get the teachings, and your grandchildren, because that's how long it's going to take. You give the teachings to an ordinary being of today, are they going to get enlightenment in this lifetime? It's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of doing, isn't it? Because there's so many karmas and so much work, and in fact you are raising the children yourself. So if you raise them with the Dharma, then you've gotten way ahead of the game as far as family karmas, as far as neutralizing karmas go. You're way ahead of the game. So we hope that will be happening more and more, that people will teach these great sayings. So when you teach them, Vivekananda made the comment, give them the Advaita first, a little bit, and then start giving them the other teachings. So his idea was to plant that seed, and then over time it would grow, and all the other teachings you would hear, which were qualified non-dualism or dualism, hopefully you wouldn't hear anything else, like half true, half false, or fallacious, or mitya-gyan, false. There are different kinds of jnanam. But if you heard all these other teachings on the acceptable level, then you would measure it against that one thing you heard, like, I am Atma Brahma, this self is Brahman. So if you came up against death, or death of your loved ones, or death of your children, or disease, or any of the great transformations that are going on, difficult situations, you would default immediately to, but this self is Brahman, why do I have to fear? You see? So that's a Mahavakya. It has a great power and a great significance to save you in times of trouble. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, as they say. It also, if you unwrap it, has the power to take you to the doorway of samadhi. What's in a word, they say? A tremendous amount when you talk about words that are jnana born. You contemplate them and you unwrap them in your mind. Your mind is like the electron microscope, and the Mahavakya is like the particle that you're unwrapping. You see? And there's a great power in it, just like in an atom. Boom. See? You unwrap it and split it. So if you can split with the electron microscope of your mind these great sayings, there will be a great implosion in you, and your ignorance won't have a chance to survive. The more you do it, the better for you, and then give it to your children. So I've given you 3 of the Mahavakyas right there, and then the other one is Pragyanam Brahma. Pragya means intelligence or knowledge. So Pragya, that is in Vedanta. Pragya has a little bit different meaning in Buddhism, so you have to be careful, again, not to mix paths indiscriminately, to know what each one means by any given word or teaching. But Pragyanam Brahman is a great, great teaching. So that's the 4 great Mahavakyas. Look at some of the others there, how beautiful. I've gathered them, but they're there in the scriptures. Brahman Satya Jagad Mithya. Brahman is real, the world is, yes, alas, unreal. I have to come to understand it. It's why Christ told you to renounce it. It's why Buddha renounced it. It's why other beings told you to try and renounce. And we said this morning at satsang and after satsang, the householders will renounce internally. The monks will renounce internally and externally. So if you're from the walk of life that is non-monastic, hopefully you're borrowing from monasticism and also taking your children around holy company like that. You will be learning the art of inner renunciation, and that will get rid of fear and ignorance, especially through teachings like that. How about Kevala Asti? You are alone. There are teachings in Judaism and Christianity like that. You come into the world naked, you leave the world naked. That is, you come in without anything and you go without anything. So that's the kind of idea. Since that happens in relativity, why don't we make it a non-dual axiom in reality? We talk enough about relativity. It's all science talks about. When you want to hear about reality, you go to the seers. I mean, relativity has an opposite, folks. It's called reality. So let's start putting our mind where reality dwells, in the heart of mankind, as the Atman, as Buddha nature, however you want to call it. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahman, all this is Brahman. Can't say that without first doing that renunciation process, that discrimination process that Swamiji named himself after, Viveka Nanda. You must do that Viveka before you can say something like that and not only mean it. You might mean it with good intention, but it has to be more than good intention. You have to say it and know it. So at first you're going to say it and you're going to unwrap it and then you'll come to know it. And you'll know that all of this is Brahman is a statement that points to what's behind the object, what's underlying the form, what is the basis for the world, and what is not the body and personality of the human being, but the Atman, the underlying substratum. That's what they mean when they say all is Brahman. In other words, take the world away, Brahman still exists. Take Brahman away, if you could somehow do that, zip. Nothing exists. Thankfully, one of these Mahavakyas says everything exists. Everything is, you see. So, sayings like this, Aham Atman, I am Atman, Sarvosmi, I am everything, Asmi, I am. You want to take it down to one word, then just walk around saying, Asmi, Asmi. Just ask me, and I'll tell you, Asmi. I am. And nobody says I'm not. Everyone says I am. And so forth and so on. I told you I wasn't going to go through this whole chart, but this will give you a taste and will get you into the vibration for the chart I'm about to introduce to you. There at the bottom is the Om sign. And there, even underlying the Om sign, is Divine Mother. You see, may she bestow blessings and liberation. Bhakti Mukti Gyanam Dehi, the beautiful saying. Or Prabhuda Sarvada Tishtet, get thee ever awakened. She wants you awake spiritually. Or Tavaivaham, I am thine alone. I belong to you, Mother. Tavaivaham, beautiful mantra of the Shaktas. Maybe even more than a mantra, a Mahavakya of the Shaktas, those Divine Mother worshippers. Tavaivaham. And Saham, she I am. You can say, I am he, or I am that, or I am. You could also say Saham instead of Aham. I am she, or she I am. And meditating on Divine Mother will then be a precious thing, and possibly you'll even sing songs about it. And you'll be able to express it in music like this, for instance. Niranjani Jyoti Shri Jagat Janini Shri Para Prakriti Mahaprakriti Chandika Devi Ambika Devi Triguna Devi Om Tarini Bhavani Devi Mahashakti Devi, Devi Jagadatri Bhuvaneshwari, Brahma Vidya Devi, Kali Durga Devi, Saraswati Vakdevi Adya Shakti. So many names for Mother. One of them was, as you could probably hear, Vakdevi, just Mother of the Word. You see. So we sing about her. Shri Devi Padam, Shri Devi Padam, Shri Devi Padam, Shri Devi Padam. Shri Devi Padam. Padam means feet. Just arrive at Divine Mother's feet. That'll be good enough for me. Maybe I can attain her heart and her head later, you see. But give me her feet to start out. Shri Devi Padam. In other words, save me, O Mother, save me from this round of births and deaths and ignorance. So that's some of the great sayings of the Shaktas. Well, since we're in a Shakta-oriented ashram here, we love Krishna, we love Shiva, we mix Vaishnavism and Vaishnavism and Shaivism and worship of Ganapati and all together in a very healthy amalgam. But our chosen ideal, our Ishtam, is really Mother, the goddess. So it's fitting that we show some of these Shakta Mahavakyas. Besides, they all belong to her anyway, they say, the great sayings. Now, that's a good introduction to this new chart I wanted to show you called the Mahavakyas of the world's avatars. I wanted to take it out of just the Indian context and show you some of the contexts that it can be placed in, that other beings that are, well, we have to be a little careful here not to assign the word avatar to, say, Muhammad or Moses, because they're considered messengers, so we don't want to step on the toes of the philosophy. India just happens to believe that this is all Brahman and God is in everything, and God can get into mankind too. I don't have any problem with that myself, but in some of the religions it's more like, oh, God appears and instructs the messenger from on high. Doesn't actually get in to the body. I can see it, I can accept it. Why would God want to get into the body when he is essentially formless? So whatever the case may be, philosophically speaking, you can figure that out yourself depending on the religion that you decide to follow and the path you decide to take. But you can say that very definitely that God is at least associating with the human body. Is it not true? And we feel the divine there in us, and we feel the divine in others, especially in the avatar, or the seer, or sage, or yogi, or rishi, or avadhuta, or saint, or the kind of being that comes. You see. So I put together this chart so you could see, and again, get a little bit of inspiration out of it. The different avatars. Right there in the center, I put our Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, and I want to start off with one of the great sayings out of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. I think some of these may not qualify for Mahavakyas, because Mahavakyas are supposed to be just a few words, but it's very hard to look through some of the scriptures and find Advaitic kind of sayings that are just slimmed down like these. These are rare, these Mahavakyas here, these traditional ones. Tattvamasi, just 3 words and you've got it. Or Aham Brahmasmi, just 2 words and you've got it. Or Asmi, just 1 word and you've got it. So it's a very profound way of meditating and, let's say, cutting to the chase, philosophically and spiritually. But Sri Ramakrishna says here, one of my favorites, the soul bound is man. That same soul free is God. Beautiful, huh? The soul bound, that's man. But that same soul free is God. So it sort of doesn't care about the body, whether embodiment isn't the thing. Embodiment's not going to keep God from showing itself, and body's not necessarily going to help God show himself. It's just that when you see a bound soul, that's God in a bound condition, but that same soul can be freed. And all of a sudden you see the free soul, the Jivan Mukta, walking around, God on 2 legs, as Vivekananda called it. God walking around on 2 legs, one of his sayings when he came here to America. So, a very good Mahavakya. He also said, if a man's mind gets boiled in the fire of knowledge, he will not be used thereafter for the next creation. You want to stay free of the next round of 4,320,000,000 year cycles of birth and death? Does it sound appealing? Or do you want to be along for the ride? It's your choice, really. But if you want to think about it, then boil your mind in the fire of knowledge. Those seeds in there that can sprout bodies, they will not be able to sprout. If you cook rice or paddy over a fire for just a few seconds and then put it on the ground and put water on it, come back in a month, it won't germinate. No more bodies is what he meant. But if you don't and you strew it around after the rains come back, there's a riot of growth, you see. Bodies without number. You might have noticed how many forms there are on every level of existence: insects, animals, plants, humans. And then that's just the seen. What about the unseen? The unseen has gods and goddesses and ancestors and deities without number. Trinity, rishis, yogis, disembodied spirits. That's the unseen. But if you're not careful, it'll turn into the obscene. You don't want that to happen. See? So come to know the seen and the unseen, avoid the obscene, and become the seer. That's your true nature. That's what you are. And that's what Buddha says up here. He says, shine out thyself as thine own light. Show yourself as the light of consciousness. Whether you're avatar or prophet or messenger or Ishvarakoti or vibhuti or guru or aspirant or human being, shine it out. It sounds like Christ saying, doesn't it? It says, what would it behoove you to gain a great light and then go hide it under a bushel somewhere? If you gain a great light, show it about, you see. Not out of pretentiousness or boasting, but share it. Share it with people. Help them bring out their light too. See, that's what the Avatar is doing. He wants your help. That is, once you get yourself in a good condition to be able to help. Otherwise, you'll just be in the way. Sort of like a well-intentioned child getting underfoot. So make sure you understand the teachings before you step into that arena, as we were just saying. He also said, that is Lord Buddha, they who regard the body as a flake of foam on the waves shall no longer see death. That's out of the Dhammapada. That's early Buddhism. When Buddha was still alive, or just after he passed, Dhammapada was collected together by some 500 arhats who all thought back, what was my experience with Lord Buddha when he was alive? And they gathered the Dhammapada, kind of sort of like a concentrated period of the Upanishads, you see. When the Vedas had been meditated on long enough, then the rishis got together and decided, oh, we better write this down for posterity. The Upanishads were born. So in Buddhism, it happened in a more concise fashion, less time. And so after Buddha passed, these arhats got together and remembered what he said to them and wrote it down. It was very fresh, and it's remained fresh, just like the Upanishads. So there he's saying it to you, just through the body. If you regard it as a flake of foam on the wave, and you'll no longer see death. He says, they who discern truth as truth and illusion as illusion walk the right road. Isn't that beautiful? Krishna says it in the Gita. The unreal never exists. The real never ceases to be. The truth about both of these have been seen by the seers, right? That is, the truth that the unreal never exists and the real never ceases to be, both of those have been seen. They're not just jumping to the real always exists. They're taking time to say the unreal never exists, because that's what's plaguing you, not the real. The unreal is what's plaguing you. It's plaguing the mind. It's mitya-gyan. It's the son of a barren woman. Things that don't make sense, see, in the world and in you, in your mind, are plaguing you. Why are you giving them room for any growth in the mind by brooding on them? Get thee behind me and be free. Be content and be free. So he says it in that way. Those who discern truth as truth, illusion as illusion, they walk the right road. their discrimination is sound. So make that discrimination the mead, the nutrition of your spiritual life. Even after enlightenment, you don't give up that kind of discrimination, because Maya is that flummoxing, is that confusion, that confusing. It's inscrutable how it works and how it can get into everything. So you walk a razor's edge, as is said in the traditions. So you're very careful to stay in yoga once you attain it. Well, that's Ramakrishna and Buddha. Let's look over on the left-hand side with the Abrahamic tradition. Moses is there. He says, "Hear ye, O Israel, our Lord is one God." That's a very Advaitic statement. I didn't find a lot in the Old Testament that I could put into words about Moses' teachings. The next quotes, in fact, I found were in the Song of Moses, which is a beautiful testament, but a lot of that too is about his people, war, having to move about from country to country. This is what happens when with Moses and Muhammad, the two sides of that Abrahamic stretch, is that they were uprooted from their country and had to wander, or their country was besieged on 2 or 3 borders by different conquerors. So their scripture reflects that period of war that they're in. So the terms that they put the truth in sometimes are very stark and very, very stern. So in this case, I had to go to the Song of Moses. He says, "Thou remainest ever the same, and thy years will not change that." Thou remainest ever the same, and thy years will not change that. Doesn't it sound very Advaitic? You are birthless, deathless, in other words. You don't age. Birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death are transformations, and God does not transform. There's your Mahavakya for the week. You see. Go home, just walk around saying that. Those of you who are home, say it here, in the hallways. You ashramites, you inmates in the free prison here. I teach in prisons, so I go where people aren't so free. And these great sayings burst apart walls and break down bars. Not just in the mind, but actually out in the world too. In the prison itself, you can almost see right through your bondage. That's the point of a great Mahavakya. It will free you. Thou shalt know the truth, and the truth shall
set you free.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Song of Moses also says, "It is not hidden, neither is it far off. It is not in heaven, nor is it beyond the sea. Verily, it is nigh unto thee, nestled deeply in thine own heart." I'm talking about the Almighty Father. A beautiful saying. And so some sayings from Moses here. Jesus, of course, is next. "I and my Father are one." We are always citing that because it's just obviously and undeniably a non-dual Mahavakya. I and my Father are one. He had the experience, so we know there's something beyond origins, beyond Genesis, beyond morality, beyond ethics, beyond, far, far beyond. In fact, it undoes the ideas of eternal damnation and so forth. It just outstrips them completely. So "I and my Father are one" is one of the great sayings in this part of the world. Although, of course, he didn't come from this part of the world. You have to keep that in mind. Europe, America, he wasn't from there. He also said, no man hath seen God at any time." I think it was John or one of the great disciples that said that he heard Christ say that. No man hath seen God at any time. God's formless. It has to be a non-dual statement. You infer that you cannot see God with these eyes, you cannot hear God with these ears. The only argument against that would be somebody in samadhi. As Sri Ramakrishna said, a man gets love eyes, a man gets love ears. A man gets a love tongue and begins to speak love. So in that way, he himself is in the one consciousness. But still, how can you see that? You can only see the outer side of it, right? He's walking, he's speaking, he's talking, he's hearing, he's seeing. What is he hearing? What is he saying? How is he expressing himself? That you hear, but what you don't see is that one consciousness that's underlying all forms. The next one from Christ, love not the world, nor the things that are in the world. That's a beauty. For those who have a little bit of yen with the renunciation side of religion, which is the side of spirituality, leading to spirituality, by the way. Birds have nests, foxes have holes. The Son of Man hath no place to lay his head. Those who love their life shall lose it. Those who hate their life shall get eternal life. I mean, those kinds of sayings are stark sayings in Christianity, and they're not bantered around much at church. I have not come to bring peace, I have come to bring a sword, and with it I shall divide man and son, mother and daughter, mother and daughter-in-law. I will divide them because one wants the truth and one wants the world. And you cannot serve God and mammon at the same time. So he was very non-compromising. He was a sannyasin Middle Eastern style. We know what the sannyasins Far Eastern style are like. He was a sannyasin Middle Eastern style, walking around free, before there was any such thing called Christianity. And there he was. You probably didn't walk up to him and say, "Oh, you're the Christ." You probably said, "Hello, Jesus." The last one here, verily I say unto thee, that he who loves his life shall lose it, but he who hates his life shall receive it again in eternity. All of those can be put in songs, for instance, like the Ilahis of Sufism. Seek thee first the kingdom of God, and all else shall be added unto thee. The kingdom of God lies within. Be like the little children. Yahoo, Yahoo. I should be like the little child in order to get into heaven. Your ego has to go away. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, a child's ego is not a problem at all. You can try and cajole his expensive cloth away from him, and he'll say, "No, this is mine. My mother gave it to me. You can't have it." But then you show him some trinket, he goes, "Oh." For a couple penny trinket, you can get it away from like that, or just wait a few seconds and leave it lying somewhere. Discard it. It has no attachment. So Ramakrishna used to use the little child as a teaching of a being who is beyond the gunas. Gunas, slothfulness, restlessness, and balance. He's beyond them. They pass across him without leaving any mark, just easily, childlike. They don't fall into any bag. They're free all the time. See, when they're crying, something that's just the worst thing that ever happened to them, all of a sudden they've forgotten it and they're smiling again. An adult doesn't do that. Goes on brooding for months on that worst thing that ever happened to them. Takes it to his grave, maybe. See? So, birds have nests and foxes have holes, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Thou shalt know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Yahoo, 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 Yahoo. And I'm not talking .com here either. Might as well say, Yahweh, Yahoo. That was a name for God in the Jewish tradition. So, in Sufism, as some of you know, it's a very powerful Mahavakya itself. You get into that circle, you see, of very strong guys, dervishes. Yahoo, Yahoo. You can chant that for an hour and just all your problems go away. All your brooding goes away. It's their style of getting down and getting intense. down and dirty in the spiritual life, you see. We know how to get down and dirty in all other walks of life. Let's also do it with the, Rajasic spirituality. Ramakrishna was really into Rajasic spirituality. That's the kind of spirituality that complains to Mother because she's not helping you lead your life right. You blame it all on her. And she comes running to help you. Let's look at Muhammad below. All of you have issued forth from the One, he told him. All of you have issued forth from the One. And he said, the perfect man is of the most use to others. A good way of saying, again, don't try and help others until you've perfected yourself as far as possible. Make sure your ignorance has died, at least, and before you move into that arena and presume to help others. And again, as we say, when you do move into the arena and presume to help others, remember that they can only be helped if they want to be helped. You can't strew pearls before swine. You can't help people who don't want to be helped. So it's going to be very helpful for you to know that, so that you won't be disappointed in your first efforts at trying to be empathetic, compassionate, and of service to God and mankind. That's a way of putting it, really. You don't serve mankind, serve God and mankind. That's the distinction Vivekananda made. You serve mankind, they tend to stay mankind. Serve them as humans, they stay humans, have you noticed? You might even get all puffed up. Why aren't you serving me today? But if you serve God and mankind, that divinity will come out of them, because that is in everything, right? Atman will come out of them and show itself. Let's look on the other side of this chart. There is Sri Ram. Beautiful. Every time I say his name. I think of that series of chords. Shri Ram Chandra Kripalu Bhajamana Harana Bhava Bhaya Dharanam Nava Kanchalochana Kancha Mukhakara Kanja Pada Kanjaranam. There's the word pada again. I come to rest at your lotus feet. May the caged bird of my mind be released, fly high, and then come to rest in refuge at thy lotus feet. This is one of the songs we sing. In my mind, Sri Ramachandra Kripalu, full of grace, Bhajamana, may my mind be devoted, bhaja, to the feet of grace of Sri Ramchandra, who is, as far as we're concerned, the oldest avatar on historic record. Who goes before him? Even Krishna came after him, the same being, of course. Rama and Krishna. And oh, guess what? We have Ramakrishna now. So, beautiful sayings by Ram. Illumination dawns on the human mind by stages. I've been saying it ever since I read the Adhyatma Ramayana, when our founder, Lex Hickson, in India, in Calcutta, at the Gold Park Institute, that one of my teachers, Swami Nityaswarupananda, was presiding over. He had founded it. Lex Hickson, when I came to his door once, here's the Adhyatma Ramayana. I've just finished it. I want you to read it. You're going to need this. And I took it and read it. And one of the things that stuck in my mind was, illumination dawns on the mind in stages. Before then I had been thinking how, in a rush, pow, all of a sudden you're enlightened, that's it, you see. But these avastas we were talking about today, how a person goes from lower truth to higher truth, asatoma satgamaya, tamasoma jyotirgamaya, and from death to eternal life, from ritur ma'amritam gamaya, those stages are how you proceed. And the avatars will know what stage you're at just laying their eyes on you. By your spiritual physiognomy, you see. How far apart your eyes are, how big or small your nose is, how your ears are shaped, the size of your chin, if it's cleft, or how wide is your cranial vault. All sorts of things they'll see. The minute they see you, how you walk in, how you sit, how you express yourself. how you take criticism and how you listen to the teachings or not, they'll know they can read you like a book like that. And why? So that they can take you to the next stage. They're not concerned about you getting enlightenment. That could be a far cry. They want you to go to the next stage. That's why you're there. Growth may be a transformation, it may be an illusion, but it's all we have sometimes. I mean, of all the 6 transformations, birth, growth, disease, old age, decay, and death, which one would you choose? Growth. Duh. Not a hard choice. The destruction of things is their return to the cause that produced them. Was Ram a Samkhya scientist or not? You see, the destruction of things is a return to the cause that produced them. When you see something get destroyed or something die, whether it's a thing falling into oblivion or a person going to their death, they're going back to the cause that produced them in the first place. And Krishna says it again, like Ram, later in the Gita. I think he put it like, there are 2 things you should know, Arjuna. One is that the soul is birthless and deathless. And if you cannot understand that yet, then you should know that all things that are born die. And all things that die get born again. Mm-hmm. Where's the grief in this? Now there's a supremely detached being, you see. He's thought it out well. He's expressed it in such a way that people can understand it. And he lives it. So if his loved ones die, he says, oh, that's right, I'm not supposed to grieve this. There's a story of Sri Ramakrishna had this nephew whom he loved. Nephew wasn't around very long and passed away. And Sri Ramakrishna was grieving him. And people had never seen Sri Ramakrishna grieve. So he said, now I know what people of the world feel like. I felt like my heart was being wrung like a wet towel. But 2 days later, he had forgotten it all. He was his old self again. Just completely, those who die are born again. And based on the fact that he knew that that soul's birth and death was an appearance anyway. One of the best words in English is non-actual. Birth and death is non-actual. It doesn't really happen. If it happens at all, it happens in nature. It doesn't happen here in the soul. It can't. Soul is not subject to birth and death. Na mrityor na shanka, na me jati be. Do I have to sing it? Pita naiva me naiva. I have no father, I have no mother. I have no death because I never had a birth. How can the unborn die? So those are the kinds of Mahavakyas we find, the great sayings. And, I would say that you don't have to make a huge study of the scriptures like I did or like a teacher has to do. You just take a few of these Mahavakyas with you and meditate on them, day by day. Pick a good one. I didn't finish the story about my mother. She loved the teachings and I taught them to her. And we were reading the Gospel of Ramakrishna. She says, I really love that man, he's beautiful, but I'm not really attracted to form. I'm more attracted to formlessness. What you've been saying about Advaita, that really intrigues me. So I said, well, Mother, there are some things called the 4 Mahavakyas that you can take. It's not really a mantra. You don't repeat them over and over again. You say them once a day maybe. Or maybe if you're a realized soul, once every 12 years. Every cycle, you see. Or once a lifetime even, if you're... whatever the case, but I said I could teach you one. And I told her the 4, and she said, I am Atma Brahma. This self is Brahman. I like that one. So I said, okay, here's how to pronounce it. I'll write it down for you. Say this once a day. But then I said, take the mantra of Ramakrishna too. Because you need friends in high places. God is not your friend. There's no two in God. There's no friend in friendliness and befriended or betrayed. None of those exist in Brahman. You have to realize that. It's something completely other. You only understand that in samadhi, in the highest samadhi. But you can pray to the Lord, to the Mother of the universe. Those are forms. of the highest nature. Those you can go to with your troubles, with your desires, with your highest aspirations. Better yet. Beautiful. Ram says, the idea of I and thou is a fruit of the soul's ignorance. That's a good Mahavakya. The very idea of I and thou is a fruit of the soul's ignorance. The realized soul doesn't say I and thou. Doesn't think that way. Even we is not quite saying it. See? He doesn't say we're one either. He says we're not two. There's all sorts of ways word-wise to get around the issues philosophically, you see. God isn't everything, but God's not a form. That's a good Mahavakya. That's one of mine. Let's see what Sri Krishna says. Perception of the end of knowledge in truth is true knowledge. What is opposed to it is declared to be ignorance. So you must know that this knowledge is not the ultimate thing. Its end in truth is. It is the one thing, Jnanam, that will lead you to truth. Somebody wrote me an email just yesterday, I think I was reading it, and said that, anything can mislead, even the teachings. And I said, I take exception to that. The Brahmagyan does not mislead people, especially not if it's understood properly and rightly when taught by an illumined soul. That's the one thing, Atmagyan, Brahmagyan, that will not mislead you. So I took exception, very strong exception to that bit of nonsense that I saw. Compare a statement like that to the Mahavakyas. I hope you get the gist of what I'm saying. These leave no doubt to the truth. Thou shalt know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. We have to acknowledge it. We can't pussyfoot around with it. We can't compromise it. Make it amenable to our comfort zones. As Vivekananda said, pull it down to earth. Let's instead take everything on earth and raise it up to that. That was his idea. Make it all divine. You don't do that by objectifying Brahman, because Brahman cannot be objectified. It's not an object. It's an eternal subject. And when you realize that, then you'll go to it. And you will know the truth and be set free. There's no other way to it. So I can tell you these Mahavakyas, I gathered them and put them on a chart, but I can also expand on them for you. Thanks to your attentions. You're inspiring me to say these things because you're focused. He says, indivisible, it dwells in creatures as if divided. All right, so I had to come down to the qualified non-dual position a bit. But still, the main part or essence of the saying is non-dual, isn't it? Indivisible is the first word. Indivisible, it nevertheless dwells in creatures as if divided. It's a beautiful doorway into non-duality. It's a combination of Advaita and Vishishtadvaita, dualism and qualified non-dualism. And those sometimes make the best teachings because people can understand them. Sometimes the Advaita, read the Brahma Sutras or take a Zen koan, you'll know what I mean. So, what are they saying? See? Give me something I can understand here. Speak English, troops. So that's a beautiful saying, you see. It dwells in creatures as if divided. It seems to be divided. So that's Maya. It brings in the teaching of Maya. There's beautiful ways of expressing that in the 1,000 names of Mother, Sahasranam, and also in the 108 names of Sri Sharada, written by, I think, Swami Harshananda, one of the Swamis of Ramakrishna order. Beautiful way of saying that. Mother is appearing fragmented in all beings, but she's always one indivisible whole. What else does he say here? That is Sri Krishna. No one should weep for the dead or the living. All of us were before and shall not cease hereafter. All of us were before, and we shall not cease hereafter. Just because the body is there or not. Does it matter? There's the same consciousness still there. Because it's not a body, it's not an atmosphere, it's not an ether. It's not even the highest ether. It's not even the ether of Gyanam, is it? Because that has to end in truth. He just told us. So this is the kind of free that you will be set. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. How shall I be set? Free. Set means asana, doesn't it? How shall I be ready to receive these words and contemplate them, manana, roll them over in my mind? Because if a great authority tells you this, it has an impact. You know the story. Man has a headache, goes to his neighbor. Here, I have a medicine for you. It'll get rid of that headache. It works for me. Take it. He takes it home, takes the medicine from his neighbor, takes it, doesn't work. Still has a blazing headache. So he goes to the doctor the next day. The doctor says, here, take this. This will work for you. On my authority, I pronounce. So he takes it back to his house, takes one of those, headache goes away. He happens to look at the same jar of medicine that his friend gave him and the same jar the doctor gave him, and they're the same medicine. So the authority of the doctor did it. He knew medicine. The other man was just a farmer, or maybe a ne'er-do-well, or a layabout. He didn't know anything. So the authority means, so if you hear these things, these transmitted from an authority, like I did from my teacher, who had done the mantra all his life, or the Mahavakya all his life, then fine. Where did you get it, sir? I got it from Sri Sharada Devi herself. What was I supposed to say? I don't accept it? It's not going to work for me? Well, such is human ignorance. A few men, that Holy Mother herself, Hindu men, who she gave them the mantra, they came back a couple days later, it doesn't work. He said, oh no, my son, you have to say this for several years, over and over again. Do that for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, then if it doesn't work, come back and complain to me and I'll do something about it. See? So, that authority becomes you, doesn't it? And that's what you're saying. I can tell you this with authority, but the greatest authority is going to be your own proof of it, the matter. Your own actuation of saying it and earning it and realizing it. And then he said, Vivekananda said, we can compare notes later. Mm-hmm. And he means after we have each done our practice and we've reached a conclusion and gotten illumined, we can come back and say, how did you do it? I did it this way. How did you do it? I did it this way. Then we can dance around the room together. He used to do that with people. There was one story of one woman who had lost her husband and lost her son in the same month. She was totally alone now, bereft. She came to Ramakrishna in tears. What's the matter, my dear? I know you lost your husband. What happened now? Now my son died. See? So, I have no one, she said. I have no one. And so he jumped up off his seat, grabbed her by the hands, and danced around the room with her, saying, she who has no one has God. She who has no one has God. And the woman was completely surprised and shocked out of her grief. You see. She went home far less aggrieved than she had when she met the Master. This is the power of an avatar. Because she forgot the teachings, right? No doubt it's natural for people to grieve. Especially people who don't have the teachings. But people who have the teachings will get out of that grief quick, because that one who's born will die, and that one who's died will be born again. You don't have to cry for people. You should not weep for the dead or the living. All of us were before, and we shall not cease hereafter. That's the Mahavakya. If that's a great saying, then you memorize it, and it comes to your rescue when you have a great loss. Grief is one of the 3 great traps in my tradition. Not in the West. It's a go-to move, you see. But in my tradition, it's one of the 3 great traps, and you learn it as that. So you must recover from it. And go on. And if you go on, you'll find that same person again, coming to you in another form. If you don't, you'll miss her, or him, or it. Anyway, save us from all that kind of suffering, Mother. Now let's look at Shankara's way of saying it. The seer sees all as one spirit. And the world exists no longer when this mental dream is finished. The world exists no longer when this mental dream is finished. So that's why he would write something like this. Kate kanta kaste putra samsaro yamativa vichitra kashyatvam kahakuta yasta statvam chintaya tadya brata Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Mudamate, Samprapte Sanihite Kale, Nahi Nahi Rakshati Dukrim Karane, Bhaja Govindam. And end with a flare. So he says, who is your wife? Who is your son? Extremely wonderful is this empirical process. Who are you and whence have you come from? Think about this again and again in your meditations. Simple enough verse, but with very pregnant, powerful questions. There, almost every statement is a Mahavakya. Who is your wife? Who is your son? Who are you? This empirical process is wonderful, isn't it? That is, how to take apart the world of creation, preservation, and destruction. How to dissolve it all back into your mind. How to dissolve Maya's workings and be free. How exceedingly wonderful is that? The only purpose for being bound is to get free. Just to have the elation of getting free. You'll appreciate freedom more once you've been bound. If you're just born free as the so forth, you see, then how are you going to feel when you get free? Well, I was always free. I don't have anything to compare it to. So these Mahavakyas are no good. They make me free all the time, you see. I want to get bound so I can get free again and really enjoy it. See? Well, the desire for enjoyment is hard to get rid of, even at the spiritual level. Let's look at these two quotes that I crafted for the chart in the upper right and left-hand corners. There are hosts of illumined souls that populate the atmospheres of higher wisdom. Seers, saints, sages, yogis, munis, siddhas, etc. The divine incarnation transcends all of these. So there's that beautiful song we sing. Devim prasanam pranatarti hantrim yogindra pujam jugadharma patrim tam sharadam bhakti vijnana datrim daya swarupam Pranamami Nityam. Om. O Sharda, propitious goddess, killer of misery and souls resigned, savior of religion in every age, well, by saints and sages worshipped, O Mother kind. By saints and sages worshipped, O Mother kind. So when the divine incarnation comes, all of these beings worship, not just the lowly and fallen. Patita Pavana, you see. Patita Pavana is the name for the avatar, the savior of the fallen and the lowly ones. That was the name for Rama and Sita, the earliest incarnation, and it carried through. Now we know we can go to Rama and Sita, or Krishna and Radha, or Ramakrishna and Sharda, and be saved as lowly and meek and put upon as we are, you see. So it's natural those would go to her. But what about these? When Lex Sixton and I were doing our practices, we needed someone to take us to task. We weren't slouches, spiritually speaking. We'd been places and known things and read scriptures and done meditation and learned puja and been to India, hung out with the swamis, with the lamas, with the rinpoches, with the roshis. The roshi married me. Not married me personally, but helped me get married. So we went to Swami Sheshananda. He put us in our place. He locked the door and wouldn't let you out. You'd call him and say, I'm coming to your ashram. Okay, and he'd hang up. It was like 2-word conversation on the phone. That's how he communicated on the phone. Then you'd go there and it's like, you'd be shown a cot in the corner and, he'd lock the door. You wouldn't go out. You'd have to live the ashram life, whether you liked it or not. So then you would follow the hours of classes and the satsangs and the pujas and the worship every night and meditation in the afternoon, which was hellish, on a full stomach, sitting there meditating in the hot sun with all the windows closed and the curtains drawn, with the women behind you. Some of the least favorite of all my meditations on memory were those hot afternoons in Portland, Oregon summer. I survived. Should have given me a teacher. So, anyway, you put yourself in the fire if you want to be cut into the image, if you really want to be cut into the image. And so, who am I? What is this world? Whence have I come from? Who's my wife? Who's my child? I'll find all that out in the right way, in the right perspective, when I do that. When I put myself in the fire. So, munis, siddhas, yogis, seers, saints, sages, the divine incarnation transcends them all. That's proven by the fact that they go to the divine incarnation when it's in a body and learn from it. I'm saying it because it's neither he nor she really. Notice how the Indian avatars all look half male and half female. They're beautiful, yet they're masculine. They combine both genders in a very beautiful way. So the idea is genderless. The other quote on the other side is, as Avatar usually appears on earth in the company of divine companions, like Buddha's Noble Eight, Christ's 12 apostles, and Ramakrishna's 16 direct disciples. So there's one way of telling them that the avatars, is they come with this divine entourage, and they therefore leave behind a lineage. When I was in my earliest days, I was an admirer of Sri Aurobindo, and I considered him my teacher when I was your age. I was 19 or 20. And some of the first books I read were on Sri Aurobindo, and I read most of what he wrote, which is quite a lot. And then I met Lex Hickson, and I was telling him how much I appreciated Sri Aurobindo, and he said, well, have you read Swami Vivekananda yet? So I started reading Vivekananda and found even a greater expanse of teachings and more applicable to today's day and age and to people. And then later on, Lex said, Sri Aurobindo didn't leave a lineage, but Vivekananda did, Ramakrishna did. In fact, the last living devotee of Holy Mother is living in your old hometown. Why don't you go back there and meet him? So, encouraged me, and I met my teacher that way. And so, early on, one has upagurus. Upagurus mean teachers that help you get to a certain place. But the mantra guru, Holy Mother said, that's your true guru, because she gives you the mantra. As soon as you get the mantra, your ignorance is going away. Your future lifetimes are going away. So the mantra guru is your true teacher. one who gives you the mantra.
There's nothing worth loving that is not.
And finally, as Nivedita says, Swamiji's disciple is here with us, by the way. You should all come and see her. Is Zoroaster. You see, I have a sort of interest in the religion, even though it's waning, the membership and so forth. Very few people, enough though to keep it alive. So when I was on a plane once, I sat next to a Zoroastrian priest, and his father had been one. So they were a family. So I thought it very interesting we could speak that religion, with Vedanta. And so I looked into some of Zoroaster's teachings. He said, there is nothing worth loving that is not of the light. And the only objection we might raise to that is, he who darkness loves and hugs the form of death, to him the mother comes because she's black. As Vivekananda's great poem said, he who hugs the form of death and darkness loves, to him the mother comes, you see. So you have to be that embracing of. But then the thing about Mother Kali is she's radiant black. Radiant black. Like a black light poster was in old days, you see. That thing shines. Beautiful songs about that too. In deepest darkness, black darkness, the yogis meditate in a cave, so that they can behold her sparkling beauty all the more. If they meditated her on the sunlight and she appeared to them, the sun, would take away some of that beauty, you see. So I'm going to go into a cave, so when she appears to me, that light will be all the more beautiful. Beautiful sentiments in one of the songs. So Mahavakyas of the world's avatars, and we will move to a break here now and have some refreshment here, and also give the chance for the live streaming audience to look at this chart and maybe even this one up close in the 15 minutes we're gone. So please rejoin us afterwards. We'll break here. Thank you for your kind attentions. We are back live at SRV Associations in Hawaii for the half of the second class on Advaita of the Avatars. In the first half, we looked very deeply at the powerful principles of Mahavakyas, great sayings. And then we also looked at that new chart, Mahavakyas of the Avatars, which everyone from Krishna to Zoroaster, we looked at some of the great sayings that came out of the Zanavasta and the Song of Moses and the Bhagavad Gita and the Adhyatma Ramayana, scriptures from all different, the Bible, scriptures from all different places and locales, and these great souls that really are walking sannyasins, or their religions are named after them, but they are actually walking religion before the religion even gets formed. So those kinds of souls are the free souls that we admire, and so we're doing a series of 4 classes on them so that we can gain more appreciation, because God with form is under the press right now because of fundamentalism and hypocrisy in religion, which is always there in the backdrop, if not the foreground sometimes. Then God with form sort of gets a bad rap, a bad representation. So we want to make sure that when we get to the Father, and we get to the Father through the Son, that we appreciate what the Son is. That's S-O-N, but it might as well be a billion S-U-Ns, because they shine with that kind of light. They shine with the light of intelligence, the light of consciousness. As Zoroaster said, there's anything worth loving it has the light with it. So to take a trajectory that's a little bit more a matter of comparison, I'm putting up this chart. You have to know a little bit about the word sankalpa, which means mental projection. As we were saying this morning in satsang, there's the tree and then there's the thought tree. And so the tree has come out of the thought tree. That simple teaching of Vivekananda, the clay cup and the thought cup. He says the clay cup can get destroyed, but the thought cup does not get destroyed, except maybe in non-dual meditation where all forms go away, or in deep sleep for a while. But it comes dancing back when the consciousness inhabits the mind again, and the senses, and the body, when it associates with them. When it associates with them, its play is called Lila Sankalpa. When it identifies with it and becomes bound, it is called Mayak Sankalpa. So, going back to that great saying, if I may, for a second, that we started out with, the soul bound is man. That same soul free is God. Ramakrishna puts it in his inimitable way, as we say. So the sankalpic process is usually introduced and was given at a very ancient age when Lord Vashishta was teaching Ramachandra as a teenager. He was the teenage avatar. Only 12 people in the world knew he was a divine incarnation. Everyone else just thought he was the perfect son of King Dasaratha. Read the Ramayana, read the Yoga Vashishta, read the Adhyatma Ramayana particularly, that book that Lex Hickson, our founder, gave to me and had me read. As I was saying in the first half, it's on the shelf. It's going to bring you into current understanding of Lord Vashishta's teaching on sankalpa, mental projection. The word Sanskrit, kalpanika. Kalpanika means imaginings in time. So it points directly to that idea of life being a dream. This life's a dream, though true it seem. The only truth is He, the living. The real me is none but He, and never, never matter changing. That's how Vivekananda put it in one of his poems. So, denying himself to be the changing matter, he affirmed for himself and for everyone else that he was the unchanging Atman. And so, Kalpanika, imagining in time was not him. He wasn't entering into time. He said, where is time? Where is the time for which the soul can come and go, and all of time and all of space are in the soul? external tree, internal tree, right? So everything out there, the finite, has come from the infinite. It's come from my infinite mind. And if I know that, then I can engage in Atmic Sankalpa. If I don't know that, my life is not sport and play at all. It's Mayic Sankalpa. It's samsara. So let's look across the board at this teaching, because the Avatar knows it very well and is a master at Leela. You might have read in the Gospel of Ramakrishna, Leela Dhyan, Nara Leela, Ramakrishna called it. Nara means mankind, so it's God sporting as mankind. Now, God can sport in man and man not know it, as he said in his quote. That's bound soul. But if you begin to know that God is sporting in you, what does that mean? Yes, you feel peace and bliss, and yes, you have grand experiences, but the real meaning of it is that you have no ego anymore. God has taken over your ego and replaced it with his own divine cosmic personality. And therefore you're seeing Krishna in everything, just like the Advaitas are seeing Brahman in everything. Or you're seeing Ram in everything, if you love Ram. Everywhere you go, you see the divine form. And people even look like the divine form to you. You sure you're not Krishna? You sure your name isn't Ram? You sure look like him to me. Take off your Ram glasses. And maybe everything won't look like Ram to you anymore. But so this divine play, if you're aware of it, is Leela, Nara Leela. And it's one of the great meditations you can do too. There's formless meditation and there's meditation with form. Actually, there's 4 strata of each, the way I've been teaching it on a chart that we've seen before here at SRV. And of those, the highest of those meditations with form is Nara Leela, or Leela Dhyan. Dhyan means meditation, Leela means sport. So you're meditating on the Avatar as he sported in consciousness in any given age. As I said a few weeks ago in a class, or a few months ago in a class maybe, at Christmas we see the Leela Dhyan spill out onto people's lawns. The Christ Leela, glowing with 3 wise men, neon shepherds and neon lambs and neon baby Christs and everything. The Leela Dhyan just flowed out onto people's lawns. Now, that might be a little superficial depending on how much devotion you do have for Christ. Because if you do have real devotion for Christ, you're going to cut time down. 2,000 years is nothing. Christ is still here. He never left, because the soul never is born and it never dies. How much more would that be in effect for the divine soul, the realized soul? So you go and you meditate on 3 wise men in Christ, and you start smelling frankincense and myrrh in your own consciousness, and there's the external frankincense and myrrh, and then there's the internal frankincense and myrrh. If you have subtle senses inside, like dream senses, then you can experience that, and it can become very real for you. I know this because when I wrote the puja for SRV, Durga Puja it's called, 3-hour puja, and I borrowed from different aspects of pujas in scripture, from the Ramakrishna order, from my own teacher's puja, and from my own experience, put those all together. As I wrote it, I memorized it. And as I memorized, I realized that it was happening inside of me as I went through it in my mind. It was actually a mental side of the physical worship. So all of a sudden I looked at the altar and I said, actually I don't need to polish the articles. I'll polish them inside. It's a lot easier. So there, I'm polishing the pot, done. I didn't even spend, a penny on copper cleaner or brass cleaner. I suppose you could include that as part of your going to, now I'm going to the store, now I'm buying, so you could make it very detailed, but but it's all an inner worship. And the whole thing is really pointing to this Jnana Yoga teaching of, the external clay cup, internal clay cup. We don't think that way because we think of it in terms of creationism, not projectionism, sankalpa. We think creation is real. That these things actually were created. But the teaching is they never had a beginning, middle, and end, and neither did you. They're all a projection of your own mind. Sankalpa. Now, you can do sankalpa and get yourself into a frightful mess. You can sankalpa yourself right into hell and live there for lifetimes. It's called samsara. Or you can sankalpa yourself right out of hell and out of bondage into Naralila, into my best friend is Krishna, and I'm walking down the road with him every day. See?
Yeah.
People may think I'm crazy, but here he is. I'd like to introduce you to my friend. Let's get out of here, this guy's crazy. Well, they called Ramakrishna crazy. He saw Kali. One day he said, after he was the priest of the Kali temple, he said, one night at midnight I was going up the stairs of the Kali temple and Mother Kali ran past me, anklets jingling, completely naked, ran up the stairs. The statue came alive. Yes, it was a projection of his own mind. Not a figment of his imagination. That's what the psychologists will tell you on the therapy table. They're trying to heal you, you see. I don't want to be healed. I'd rather see Mother Kali as a figment of my own imagination than never see her at all, you see, for one thing. But what if I saw her as my own mental projection and I lived with her inside, you see, in my own mind? There's songs about it. Oh mind, let's go into the chamber of the heart. There's a shrine there, and on the shrine's an altar. On the altar sits the Divine Mother of the universe. Remember, when we go in there, you can't take your senses. But, take your tongue, because when you see her, you'll want to chant her praises. This is the song. It's got a punchline. It's a song with a punchline. So this worship is a very profound thing, this bhakti yoga. And how much more profound when you put it together with jnanam, with the wisdom of what's going on in a puja. Not just doing it by rote, but actually having the knowledge of what you're doing, what incense means, what flowers mean, what water, sacred water is, who the deity is, who you are. Kante kata samsarayam ajiva, we just sang it. So who are you? Who's the deity? Who's the worshipper? What's the puja? And exceedingly wonderful is this empirical process. You bring your consciousness to bear on everything. So a little bit about sankalpa in its positive aspect and in its negative aspect. Now in its positive aspect you have divine will at sport. In its negative you have power of obstruction. That's called avarana shakti, the power, the obscuring power in things. And vikshepa shakti, the distorting power in things. But this is revelatory power, prakasha shakti. It reveals. That's what you want. Obscuration, distortion, get thee behind me. Bring me revelation. That's my bridge into the unknown, you see. These are all across the board teachings, you see. So let's go across the board with the next level. The appearance of time, space, causation, mind, and intellect as cosmic principles, not as random events, not as figments of your imagination. No, they're cosmic principles. They're cut in stone. If I know them this lifetime, I'll know them next lifetime. So I should memorize them. Let's see. Great mind, intellect, mind, ego, thoughts, 5 tanmatras, the ego in its 3 forms, the tanmatras, the 5 senses, the 5 motor senses, the 5 subtle elements, the tanmatras, and the 5 elements, air, earth, fire, water, and ether. There's my castle. There's my cosmic castle. If I know them now, I know them forever. And guess what? Every religion is based something, has taken some of the cosmic principles and based their religion on that, especially in India. Lord Kapila did his homework. Everyone loves it. So remember, these are all cosmic principles that the soul can use. Oh, across the board, though, appearance of time, space, causality, mind, and intellect as assumed reality. They think those things are real. They're assuming them to be real. They're assuming the world to be real. But we just heard from the great sayings, Brahman Satya Jagad Mithya, right? Brahman alone is real. The world is unreal. So a different perspective as we look across the board. The next level, Lila Sankalpa, has to do with Jnanakasha and Chittakasha. The universes are modes of awareness. That's how the one sporting in consciousness sees it. The one under the influence of the power of obscuration thinks of it as Mayakasha. Universes are ego-based ideation. So one has awareness, one has the ego as their foundation. That's the difference, the distinction. The next level, acquisition of an illumined guru and adherence to the spiritual path. If you're doing a Lila Sankalpa, you'll notice that all the great souls took teachers. They found Christ on the steps, that is his parents, found him on the steps at 14 talking to the rabbis. They said, "Where did you go?" He said, "Where else should I go? I have to be about my father's business." So he was asking questions about Judaism, about the religion of the day. He'd have to know that. If he's the king of the Jews, you'd think he'd have to know that. So that's really the point here. You ask questions of teachers to find out. So any teacher, you'll find, has taken a teacher. Ramakrishna took 3 or 4. They don't need teachers. You understand what I'm saying? They're perfected souls. They need to know the times they're living in. Vivekananda came to America, went into one of his friend's parlors, libraries, shut the door, and read the entire encyclopedias in 3 days. He wanted to catch up on what was happening this millennia. He hadn't been around, in other words, for a millennia or 2. He wanted to know what mischief we'd gotten into so that he could get us out of it in the quickest possible way in his 39-year-old life. That's how much time he had to work. So, across the board, reliance on ego-mind complex and belief in conventional paths. We talked about fundamentalism and convention, mundane religious convention, superficiality in the name of religion and so forth. That's on the march. So that's at best what a soul under the influence of Mayik Sankalpa would fall into. We're going through this rather quickly, so hold on to your dhotis. Next level, discipline, curbing of the mind's tendency towards Sankalpa. Krishna tells Arjuna, Sankalpa is a positive evil, give it up, renounce it. He's telling him to stop thinking in a negative way, especially. But actually, Klistavritti's first, right? Aklistavritti's next. Get rid of your negative thoughts with positive thoughts. Then, guess what? Get rid of your positive thoughts. There's an iron chain and a gold chain. They both bind you. Haven't you noticed how morals and ethics have bound religion so that they don't go on toward the teachings, the Dharma? We're running toward the Dharma, some of us. We say, okay, enough. I understand thou shalt not kill. You don't have to harp on it. I want to know thou cannot kill. It's impossible to kill. That's the difference between a law and a dharmic law. A moral law and a dharmic law is that you can't kill. We just went through that in several forms, didn't we? Krishna and Ram telling us about it, see? No one should weep for the dead or the living. All of us were before, and we will not cease to be after. It's an unborn soul we're talking about. Ajati Vada, the path of those who know that they're never born. Ajati Vada. One of the great non-dual axioms. So they discipline the mind's tendency towards sankalpa. I will not create cloud castles in the sky. As Buddha said, "O architect of this universe, I will not build homes anymore now that I've seen you. I will not build homes of rock and stone. I will not build homes of wood. I will not build homes of flesh and bone. I will not build homes of wise conception." That's sankalpa, building homes of wise conception. So Buddha saw it and gave it up. Thousands of years before him, Krishna was on the battlefield at Kurukshetra, not far away, saying, "Give it up, Arjuna. Do not engage in it." If you want to put it this way, keep your mind at peace. If you engage in sankalpa, it's going to have an effect. Any cause is going to have an effect. That's karma, isn't it? Cause and effect is, one object hitting another and, well, let's see what happens. Okay, been there, done that. But let's look into the mind and see what happens when I think a certain thing and what the effect is. Now, I'm going to have to think a certain thing, and then I'm going to have to watch where that thought goes. And if I watch closely, here it comes, look out, you see. Get out of the way, you see. Or if it's a positive thought, you say, that's great, it's coming back the way I want it to. That's the difference between Atmic Sankalpa and Mayic Sankalpa. It's not random and chance, or left up to hope, or luck, or serendipitousness, and such silly things, you see. It's based upon will, supreme will and knowledge. Yours. You determine it. In other words, indetermination is one of the great obstacles to yoga. It's one of the 7 great obstacles to yoga. I'm sorry, 9. Getting my systems mixed up. Now, across the board, consciousness, deluded contemplation of the things of the world as being real. There it is again. I'm accepting the unreal for the real. So if you're getting tired of hearing the Vedantas say Brahman is real, the world's unreal, try looking at it in Lord Vasishta's way. Because he's mentioned it twice now. You're taking unreal things to be real. If you want to look at it through the eyes of quantum physics, it's all vibrating particles, changing at a billionth of a second. How real is that? Doesn't it sound like shifting sand to you? And doesn't Christ tell you not to build your house there? Didn't Buddha just say, "O architect of the universe, I will not build any more houses"? What's with these people, you see? These avatars, these great souls. They sound like, how do they put it nowadays? Life negators. Yes, they are. They're life negators. They're worldly life negators. They're deluded life negators. They're Mayic life negators, definitely. But they're not divine life negators because they themselves lived a divine life in the body. Isn't that simple? Can't you get that clear? I tell people when they come at me with that kind of idea. So, yes, let's negate everything that's unreal. The thing is, only Brahman is really real, so you're going to have to do a lot of negating in Vedanta and in Buddhism. See, but it's not that painful. Just give it up. You give it up in here, right? You can still work with it out here. Not saying to renounce the world like a monk. You moderate. You walk the middle path. Even the great Buddha, who was the supreme renunciate, was a middle path exponent. Sri Sharda Devi said, "I hope you're not born again because there's a lot of suffering in birth and death." She's a middle path exponent. She knows people are in the world and a lot of them can't give it up. One of her great Mahavakyas I can recall right now is that people have a hard time giving up a dented tin cup. How's that for a Mahavakya? You ask them to renounce the world, but they can't even give up a dented tin cup. See, an impoverished person would say, "That's valuable." You see, I need that. They cling to it, right? It's all they have. But clay cup, internal clay cup. See, tin or clay, does it really make any difference? One's finite and the other's infinite. But the finite came from the infinite, so that might as well be infinite too. I can get another clay cup even out there. Or another dented tin cup. You go to the street, can I have a tin cup, vendor? Yeah, here it is. Oh, I don't really comfort with that. Where's a rock? I'll put a dent in it. There, now I feel better. Get another one. Same with children. If you lose a child, yes, grieve a little while, get another one. Maybe that same soul will come back to you and your grief is keeping him from coming back. Things that keep you in that little, inside the box, you see. One lifetime scenario, those are never healthy. Vivekananda said, all those things that society holds as laws that are passé, that are old and outdated, get rid of them, because they're keeping people from growing. Time for the revolutionary, the real revolutionary to come forth. Swami Vivekananda was it. He's the harbinger, the bringer of this wisdom to us. In 1893 at the Parliament of Religions, it was staged by the mother. You can read about that. It's a matter of history now. Let's go on to the next level. In other words, to conclude, they discipline the mind, those who are into Leela, to curb the mind's tendency towards mental projection. But on the other side of the coin, they are contemplating the things of the world as real. The more sankalpa they can do, the better. The more confusing it gets, they think, the better for them. On this side, these ones who are under the auspice of Atmik Sankalpa or Leela Sankalpa practice the yoga to remove tendency for Sankalpa and the desire for objects for the world. But those on the other side, consciousness in association with Sankalpa contemplates even denser states of matter. All right, it's not enough that we see the object. We have to take it apart and look at even denser parts of the object. Until we find out that there's just nothing but particles there. What should that tell us? That there are particles of life force, there are particles of thought, there are particles of intelligence. Let's go that direction. Because if we go so far out looking at physical particles, there's nowhere to go. We're left in the lurch. Prana, we missed the pranic doorway. Chi, mana, life force, elan vital, we missed that doorway. Man should not live by bread alone. We missed that doorway, see? And so we're left in a lurch. We're just out in matter. In not just change, like the change that happens every day or every year or every decade or every lifetime. My favorite restaurant went away, see? But the change that happens at a billionth of a second, how can the mind even comprehend? So even denser states of matter are considered instead of on the other side of the coin there. They give up the tendency for sankalpa and the desire around objects. They make sure they're free. They stay free. Look at the graph in the middle, right about now. It started out on one side as nirvana as opposed to samsara. Down the middle. Down here it got into what we're talking about now. It's really sadhana, isn't it? Even the people practicing Advaita are practicing Advaita Vedanta sadhana. Those yogis are practicing yogic sadhana. The tantricists are practicing tantric sadhana. So they're doing a practice. On the other hand, there's no practice, is there? It's just worldliness, the chronic disease of worldliness, Ramakrishna called it. The evil of this age is the chronic disease of worldliness. There's no religion, there's no practice, there's no God, there's nothing but matter. That's a disease without a remedy, as Ram Prasad sings in one of his songs. Shall I sing it for you? No. Let's do the chart. Eventually it's going to come down to realization as opposed to complacency. So it's a nice measuring graph of how Mayic Sankalpa proceeds into the basement of forgetfulness, and how Atmic Sankalpa or Leela Sankalpa will end up in realization at the end of your lifetime. It's headed for realization. This is headed for nothing but laziness, slothfulness, heedlessness, complacency. Woe is me. My life is over and I didn't attain anything, and so forth and so on. Those are your mantras. So, here's one of the great teachings of Yoga Vashishta, of Lord Vashishta. He says, attenuation of sankalpa via the practice of asamvedana. It's verily awesome, I can tell you. Asamvedana. It means non-receptivity to desires and to the sankalpa that brings them about. Non-receptivity, you just won't go there. You stand off. Face them off, stand away. It would be like, I was thinking the other day, it's like the man walking down the railroad track, or say the young boy walking down the railroad tracks. The train's coming, so he doesn't know it. But this young boy put his ear to the track, hears rumbling, and steps aside. Whoosh. Safe. Non-receptivity to what's coming. You just exercise your own awareness a little bit, a little forethought, a little insight, a little of these teachings. And you're free. See, that's Vashishta's teaching. It's not about like digging out the karmas and going into the impurities of the mind and doing that kind of sadhana, you see, that's 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration. Let's bring more of the percentage of inspiration into the picture and less of the perspiration, you see. Let's make it natural and spontaneous, because that's what our soul is. That's who we are. Congratulations, you're all God walking around in men and God walking around in women. You've made the grade, you see. But you're there. You've arrived. Now it's time to realize it. Across the board, longing for desire-based existence in an embodied condition leading to cycles of birth and death. The Buddhists call that Trishna. It's one of the 9 nidanas, or links, to a 3-lifetime scenario they teach. There's a chain with links that route you into the karma from the past lifetime, leading to the karma of this lifetime, which will then lead to the karma of the next lifetime. You're in a 3-lifetime bag here. Trap. And Trishna is helping it along. Trishna is thirst, desire for things. And it's based on other things as well. 9 links. So this is reminiscent of that teaching. It's longing. Longing for things that are unreal. Things that can't satisfy you. One of my teachers' once-a-year lectures, the title of it was Satiation Never Comes. He'd started out by saying, you're all practicing the Bhoga Marga. You need to practice the Jnana Marga. Bhoga Marga means the path of enjoyment. It's not leading you anywhere except into complacency, into more lifetimes. Try the Jnana Marga on for size. I did. I'm free. What could he say? What could he do? He was standing there for 90 years. Over 90 years as an illumined soul. How else do you think he got the grace of Holy Mother? He used to say about her, I've seen her face, I've heard her voice, now I long for her grace with all my heart. He didn't ever make statements like that. We only heard him say that rarely, is when we happened to be so audacious as to ask him, what was your time with Holy Mother like? Some little voice coming out of the back, and everyone, you shouldn't have asked that. Everyone trembling, what's he going to answer, you see? And his eyes would get soft, and he would say that. So, this other kind of longing, not healthy for you. Be free. It binds you. It takes away your freedom, your willpower. And you're giving your power away to insentient things. Why are you doing that? Then after you get asamvedana, he says, contemplation of everything with the eye of abhava, non-existence, emptiness. It's like a Buddhist teaching long before the Buddha gave it. Abhava means emptiness. Thousands of years before Buddha spoke shunyata, this was in India's mind. Abhava, no moods. Nothing exists except me. I am existence. Does it sound familiar? Do you remember? There's a one word Sanskrit Mahavakya for you. Two, actually. Asamvedana and this one, abhava. Put them together. Asamvedana abhava. There's a powerful new Mahavakya for you that's ancient. See? Across the board, experience of pain and acceptance of suffering as being real. Another mention of taking the unreal for the real. Now your pain and your suffering is real. You've created the disease without a remedy. Now evil is real too, and it's not my fault. The devil is doing it. Now you've created an incarnate devil as well, to boot. And then there has to be a place for him to dwell, so let's call it eternal damnation. That's the fruits of Maya Sankalpa. Now the last thing is attainment of samadhi and absorption in Brahman. Asamvedana, abhava, samadhi, Brahman. Just like that. But for the Maya Sankalpic person, fear of pain, attachment to pleasure, leading to rebirth and ignorance. This is a nice chart of distinction between how the soul can engage in mental projection without fear, and how a soul should not engage in mental projection in ignorance. Atmik Sankalpa, it's in several stories. Lord Vashishta himself says, the universes are only modes of consciousness reflected through Atmik Sankalpa, the divine will of Parabrahma, which is said to evolve them out of itself for the purpose of sportive play. You know what story it's in is that story of the woodcutter, and the city carved in wood. He takes a nice piece of sandalwood or something, sandstone or whatever it is. He carves a whole city in it, this master carver. It's Sankalpa, it's Maya. It's not a real city, but your mind can get into it, just follow everything. So much detail, you're just sucked right in. For hours, wow, this just goes on and on. It's the story in Yoga Vashishta. I did a version of it, a quintessential Yoga Vashishta it's called, where I felt the best stories for our society in this day and time, and put it into a quintessential. It's a good 8 by 11 because it's got the charts in it. It's got about 24 charts in it, like these, that you can make a study of Lord Vashishta's wonderful philosophy. He has a cult following. You just type in Vashishta on the internet now, boom, boom, boom. You see how many even Americans are following his yoga. Worthy of a glance at least. One other quote at the bottom and we'll move on. By Atmik Sankalpa is meant divine will in manifestation. But it degrades into Maya Sankalpa via ego-based ideation that arises as a result of falsified relationship between subject and object. You start to cause the distinction between God and mankind, distinction between spirit and nature. And pretty soon that distinction becomes real, and there's not one anymore, there's two. And then you forget the two and the many. It's ego-based ideation, isn't it? The ego wants to play, so it starts playing with Maya. But the realized soul isn't going to go there. It's divine will at play for him. And he won't forget that. And he won't deviate from that. That's how you see the Leela Dhyan. It says, didn't Ram live a divine life, even though he was sent in exile into the forest? Didn't Krishna live a divine life, even though he became the king of Madhura toward the middle of his life? Didn't Christ live a divine life, even though he knew he was going to be crucified? Didn't Buddha live a divine life? Even though he was poisoned in the end by bad food someone gave him? They all lived a divine life. So, is there any Maya Sankalpa in their lives? And how long did their lives last? 2,000 years? 2,500 years? 5,000 years? 10,000 years? For those of you Hatha yogis who are seeking longevity, look at the avatars. If you want true longevity. Longevity on that side of the board, Maya Sankalpa, is an occult power. Longevity on this side of the board is an avatar. Make your choice. Make the wise choice. So, one of the Yoga Vashishta charts, some, like I said, some 24 of them, we look at them every once in a while to bring in that philosophy. One of the darshanas of India, I call it. It's not listed as that, but it might as well be. It's very Vedanta. Now, we still have good time. We have a half hour, at least, or more. So let me show you another new chart. Because the avatar is very much, has his eye, his or her eye, on the avastas, like I said, gradations of soul. And we should show it in terms of another of Vashishta's teachings, the 14 stages of progression. This will segue into next week's class because I have another new chart that has to do with progress towards true freedom. All of these three will be a part of this avataric Advaita of the Avatars class, and that will carry on into next week so we can see what the soul's predicament in Maya is, how it transcends Maya with the help of great souls like the Avatar, the Avatars, and also when it becomes realized, what other stations are there for it to occupy? They say there can't be two sheriffs in the same town, right? Mm-hmm. So if the Avatar is living, they say, well, maybe I don't want to be the Avatar, or I can't be the Avatar. I think I'll just be a seer, or I'll be a yogi, or I'll be a rishi, or I'll be an adept. You see, whatever the case, they're all free. So give them any name you like. Their ignorance has died. That's the main thing. They can go and do what they will, Atmik Sankalpa style, Leela Sankalpa style. Maya ignorance is gone for them, but they know it's still in you. Swamiji made that statement. He said, you are never in Maya. It is Maya that's in you, so get rid of it. There's a Mahavakya for you. You are never in Maya. It's Maya that's in you, so get rid of it. Know the truth and set yourself free, in other words. Now, both of these charts are very interesting. In fact, I think I really need to teach it from here and make reference to this, because this is very simple. This 14 stages of upper and lower knowledge, we usually take it at a Yoga Vashishta retreat, so it doesn't get shown very often, but I consider this to be really valuable for a precious teaching in the Dharma for beings who want to understand not only the stages of avastas, these great aged stages, but how people wake up. Because usually the teaching is from here up. It's called the 7 Atmagyana Bhumikas. And these are of mere mention, the lower hells, the sunken grounds. The teaching is usually given from here up, the 7 Atmagyana Bhumikas. But these lower darkened lands, if you put them together, you can see how a soul, and it's one of the questions that many of us are thinking about, how does a soul get out of darkness? What's its actual dynamics of a soul getting out of darkness? How does that work? Can we see grace working? If we can't see God, no one has seen God ever with these eyes, then must be an internal working. How is it that how can we see that inner working, that empirical process that Shankara said was so wonderful? How can we see that in action and come to know it so that we can utilize it ourselves for our own progress? What to speak of when the time comes to help others, like our children and so forth. then we know what they're going through, you see. So I deem it very important to add the lower 7 stages in. They are mentioned, so let's look at them. And these names are very interesting too. Bindu Jagrat. It's a state of ignorance, a root state of ignorance the soul is born in. You have to say, why was the soul born in that? Because of past lifetimes karma. The more lifetimes you live in ignorance, the more you consider the world to be real. That's how Ramakrishna put it. So you come back considering the world to be real. Guess what? There's a Mayak Mahavakya in this. The world is my oyster. It's not a good thing to say, you see, or to think. The world is my oyster. Here, I can have everything I want. You can't have anything here unless you detach from it in non-ownership, non-agency, non-separation. Then you can be free and move amongst it without these repercussions going on, karmas. And worse, going on Prarabdha style, but then going on future too. You do something, and that instead of listening to the train tracks, you've done an act unthinkingly, and it's coming back at you like a stray bullet out of nowhere, you see. Fine, walking along, all of a sudden, you're lying in a pool of your own blood, as it were. A stray bullet. I heard one 3 days ago. I was out in the garden, somebody was shooting pigs above, and a bullet went right past me, maybe 500 feet away. If I had been standing up or, 500 feet that way, who knows? A stray bullet might have caught me. First time I ever heard it up there in the old hood. But, you'll hear them in movies about the Old West. Bouncing off, ricocheting off something. This has an unmistakable sound. So if you're up there shooting pigs, people, point down and look beyond to see if there's some lowlands. Some poor farmers down there. They don't want to be hit by a stray bullet. So this Bindu Jagrat is the very lowest state of a human being, and the state of root ignorance. And the other sign of it is that incipient manifestation of the jiva. He believes himself to be an embodied being. In fact, he doesn't really know what an embodied being is. He doesn't really think, I am an embodied being. If he did, that would be tantamount to saying, who am I, right? Well, that's going to happen later on, you'll see. But right now he's not thinking, who am I? He's just really thinking, he's not thinking. It's called root ignorance. There's not much to be said about that state. It's just tamas. It's the cloud of unknowing is thick there. The next level is Jagrat. Jagrat really means like waking state in the world, in the body. He only knows his waking state. He doesn't know the state of his dreaming yet, and he doesn't know the state of deep sleep, and she certainly doesn't know samadhi, the other 3 states of his being. So he's pretty much Jagrat. And that kind of awakeness is not spiritual awakeness. Let's make sure we know that. It's just awake to matter, awake to senses. That's it. Zip. There you see the characteristics. Awareness of individuation. Inception of differentiation. It's selfishness, basically, kind of differentiation. I and my father aren't one. My father doesn't exist, and these other people around me are inferior to me. They don't matter. I'm the only thing that's important. Over here, you're talking about animalism. The animalistic is gross, you see, and the ignorant, gross level. So you're starting to work this way. Yes, the soul does evolve. Yes, there is hope for the soul in deep darkness. That help may be slow in coming, depending on their own perception, openness, or lack thereof, or to the degree that they're open or not in any given cycle. Then you get to Mahajagrat, progression of repeated rebirths, and believes man and universe to be dissimilar. that's a misleading kind of teaching. Man and the universe are dissimilar. That's called higher knowledge, isn't it? When you know that you're not matter. But here, he doesn't know he's not matter. He's still thinking he's matter. And the dissimilarness is based on him not knowing that the universe has come from him. That's the best way of describing it that I can say. So you can see the subtle difference in shades of teaching there. You are dissimilar from the universe. He should be aware of that now. He should be far beyond the station that he's assigned to, shouldn't he? But the problem is that he's not thinking of it in terms of sentiency and insentiency, the soul and nature, the soul in nature. He's not aware of that. As far as he's concerned, nature is the only thing that exists. And he doesn't know that nature has come out of him. All of nature has come out of his mind, sankalpa, right? It's all a mental projection. You'll get that idea given to you and handed to you again and again and again in Buddhism and Vedanta until you finally get out of this Western way of thinking that it's created out of nothing. Vivekananda made that beautiful statement. I can kind of paraphrase it. It said, Advaita Vedanta will be the future religion of humanity. There's no doubt about that. Just a matter of how long, what time. It says, even the priests in Christianity have been running to the Bible to change the wording since I've been here. The idea of a big God sitting around on a cloud up in heaven above you, and that kind of idea is fast fading from the mind of the Westerners. And what's taking its place is the idea of the eternity of the soul and the eternity of nature. Everything is eternal. There was never a time when anything was created out of nothing. It's a misleading idea to think, we came from dust and go back to dust. That's the body we're talking about. Vedanta would clarify. But you didn't come and you didn't go would be the Advaitic standpoint. And if you want to drop a level down from that, then you came from your mind. You produced a body from your mind, and then your consciousness got in it, lived a while, and then it gave up the body. That's the qualified way of thinking about it. And you'll live enough of those lifetimes until Lila Sankalpa kicks in, and then you'll find yourself not believing in a God sitting on a throne somewhere and a devil somewhere down below you in hellfire, and that kind of silliness. Non-literal, it's fine. You can find meanings for God in the sky and devil under the earth. You can find symbolic meanings, but literally it's not going to wash. Not for the intelligent people of the West. You're going to have to find a way to explain to them, and Vedanta is that way. It will be the future religion, Advaita particularly, of thinking mankind. He prophesied. Now if you go beyond that third level of Mahajagrat, you get to Jagrat Swapna. Jagrat is waking state, Swapna is dream. Oh, guess what? Now, the dreams are beginning to work into things. You see, he's beginning to have a second side of his consciousness, a second level of his consciousness kick in. Because dreams are not just the things that I had tonight, which are sort of, I've forgotten, but dreams are aspirations, aren't they? You dream things about things that you can't have here, but you want. So your desire soul is wrapped up in those. Your aspirations are wrapped up in those. So what are the signs there? Sovereignty over nature. Does it sound like what the West has accomplished? Or it thinks it's accomplished? Nature can backfire on it at any moment. Try and be an overseer of nature or controller of nature is probably not a wise thing. Try and live in harmony with it as far as it goes. Also gets attached to objects, also labors under delusion. So you can just take this as a back and forth with a little arrow, you see, and how a soul in the incipient level of root ignorance works its way out. And there are signs that you can tell by. The avatars know these signs. I can see where you are. You're at that fourth state called such and such, you see, Jagrat Swapna. And what you need is to get to the next avasta. What is that? It's swapna, pure dream. Gains objectivity, examines life's events in a dream, and remembers everything upon awakening. Does it sound like you're psychic? Does it sound like you're a person who is interested in metaphysics and is starting to experiment with that level of things? Prana, occult, that kind of thing. Reading dreams, interpreting dreams. See, there's even some of that in religion. So you're beginning to get to that level where your dreams are becoming kind of real and the waking state is taking a back seat. Don't stop there, you'll just get attached to sleep, as many people do. So I think I'll go to sleep now. Good morning, good morning. It's 1 in the afternoon. You're just getting up. The next level is Swapna Jagrat. Now Swapna has taken the, as I was just saying, it's taken the prominence over waking state. You're kind of living a dream. You're living your dream. Signs there, you recall events long past and you render the waking state lucid. You've gotten out of that incipient state of the root ignorance, the density, the weightiness, the heaviness, and now you're kind of getting free. So you're headed for these jnana bhumikas. These are called the ajnana bhumikas, as you can see there. Is it on there? Oh, something I put in after this chart was made. I put in here ajnana bhumikas, and then here jnana bhumikas. It's on my version. It reminds me I have to redo this. Now, the seventh state of ajnana bhumikas, the lands of ignorance, is sushupti. You see how they explain it. Sushupti is deep sleep. So they really are taking this idea of your 3 states of awareness seriously: waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. And it also shows us that it was not just the gift of Gaudapada. Gaudapada just resurrected it. It was there, very ancient, back in Vasishta's time. The idea of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep was examined by souls, by very superlative souls. There you have that the man realizes all states as beset with pain. The first noble truth of the Buddha. He's finally getting some real sense. All states of awareness are beset with pain. All states of form. And guess what? Pleasure is pain too, because they always come in turn. Here, have a chocolate cupcake. Oh, that's good, my favorite. Here, have another. That's really good. Here, have another. Oh, that's enough, please. No, have another. I'll force it down your throat. Here, have a 5th. Oh, I don't like it anymore. What you love, you hate. If it gets to be too much, you see. So that's the way with pleasure. It becomes insipid. So you've gone from incipient to insipid. What else is there? Perceives all worlds in Maya. These are realizations. Now you can see why you're coming to the higher lands. The Buddhists have the 10 pure lands. We have the 14 jnana and ajnana bhumikas to explain how a soul works its way out of darkness. Guess what? It happens. We don't anymore have to just say the worldly and the spiritual are 2 things and never the twain shall meet. There are passages being made. There are roadways being created. There are open arms on one side for those who are ready. What happens when you're ready? You get to Subhecha, the first stage. It's you study the Atmagyan scriptures, you seek guidance from an illumined soul, your desires are to enjoy jnana essence. You live on wisdom. And the attraction for the path of indifference attends you. They don't care about anything anymore, and we don't mean that in a bad way. It's not like, lack of concern for people's welfare or any of that. It's an indifference. It's what Krishna said, maitri, friendliness to those who are in need of friendship. And Mudita, joy in front of those who are sorrowful. And upekshanam, equanimity in this face of chaos. And finally, this very thing. Basically, you are indifferent to evil people, to evil things. You become indifferent. And evil things are already been proven to you to be pain and pleasure, aren't they? So you're indifferent to that too. So people are saying, you're not having any fun anymore. Or they're asking you, are you having fun? But you've already classed fun and non-fun and pleasure and pain into one bag, and you're not really thinking in those terms anymore. Your fun is the Atmagyan scriptures. Your fun is the Jnana essence. And your fun is seeking illumined souls and getting wisdom from them. If it could be called that. Now here we got to catch up. Animalistic and an ignorant person is at the gross level. The worldly person is at the primal level. And the intelligent person arrives at the vital level. We're using intelligence, prana as intelligence to move their thoughts, in other words. And then the religious person is at the ephemeral, at the ethereal level. And the spiritually awakened person is at the celestial level, thinking in terms of awakening and higher things, you see. So basically this is the march of the soul put in a very simplistic way to sort of explain the 14 Atmagyan Bhumikas and how one ascends in that way. At this point, we'll come back to this and read some of the quotes on this. Actually, I don't have to close that. I have 2 copies. The quote on top is by Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. The jiva at first remains in a state of ignorance. It is not conscious of God, but of matter and multiplicity. It only notices the many things around it. You could see how it's described in these 2 systems. Upon attaining knowledge, it becomes conscious that God dwells in all beings. But upon attaining higher wisdom, it discards both knowledge and ignorance and talks of nothing but God day and night. So he's pretty much describing 3 levels that are found in this whole march on these 2 charts. 3 levels: ignorant, knowledgeable, intellectual, and then finally awakened, spiritually awakened, so that God takes over everything in his life now, like it did for Ramakrishna. He used to say, my ears are burning with the talk of worldly people. When will my devotees come to me? And the minute he said that out into the ether, they started coming. Rakal first, Naren next, so forth. They started coming out of the woodwork to find him. He climbed up on the roof of the Kali temple one night and said, "Where are you, my beloved ones? Where are you?" He yelled out into the darkness. "I'm here, I'm ready, come to me." And they started coming. His 12-year sadhana period was over, earth-shaking sadhana. And the 16 direct disciples were already headed at him. Already moving towards him. The lotus had bloomed in the woods. The bees are on the way. And Vivekananda was one of those. See, how do we sing that? Swadharma shrestatam sagarvam samsatam janana drishtata tayaiva bhajyaho swadharmo vaidiko yanargo darshitaha vivekanandate prabhate pranjali narendra shashave narendra yovane narendra kridane narendra shikshane narendra palane narendra yarpane vivekanandate Prabhate Pranjali. Just 2 verses of a beautiful 12-verse stotram by Swami Harshananda, one of the Sanskrit scholar swamis in the Ramakrishna order. Beautiful. I'll just read it out for you. The eternal verities contained in the Vedic religion were revealed and explained lucidly by you, Swami Vivekananda, the great teacher. This humbled the pride of those who erroneously proclaimed their creed to be superior to others. By silencing these false assumptions, you have opened all minds to truth and have drawn attention to a truly universal path. In this auspicious dawn of awakening, of illumination, O Vivekananda, we offer you our humble salutations. So as the soul awakens by the power vested in them by the Avatar, who wants to see them awake, who wants them to know that they're ever awake, who wants to invest them with yogic insomnia, they come and they get enlightened, like Swami Harshananda did, and then he writes it in a song. I like his last verse. He says, after the whole thing's over, he says, to all those who would attain true freedom, we encourage the chanting of this hymn composed in a sacred Himalayan mountain retreat. He went on a retreat, and when he was on that retreat, probably at Mayavati, he wrote this hymn to Swamiji, long after Swamiji had left the body. Devoted recitations of these verses on Swami Vivekananda imbues one with physical vigor, mental strength, and spiritual power, and increases discrimination and detachment. In this brilliant dawn and collective awakening of all beings to higher truth, we offer Narendranath, the leader of souls, our eternal salutations. Chanted now by 4 or 5 million people when they want to. And I put it out on a recent CD, so if you're not chanting it, now you can. The Shakti Choir is. They remember it because they just recorded it several months ago in the studio. So some highlights for explaining these charts as we go along. We only have 5 minutes, so I'm going to pick up these charts and this new chart about spiritual progress towards freedom next week. And that class is going to be live streamed? We're not certain.
I'm 90% certain.
We're 90% certain. This just in. 90% certain that next week's class in the Pahoa area of the Big Island, away from our ashram, will be live streamed. So be on hand for that, so we can take up the Jnana Bhumikas and see how a soul begins to really soar, and also find out how all of this works, how Shiva, with his great arrow that he's given to Ram for his great bow, you see, he says here, and we'll end with this, with the intellect sharpened by thoughts on reality alone, release the arrow of mind and penetrate the mark, the imperishable Brahman. You know the Sanskrit to that one, I'm sure. Some of you know that by heart. Danur grahitva upanishadam mahastram. Sharam hupisanashita sanjayita. Ayamya tad bhavakatena chetasya. Laksham tadevaksharam somya vinti. Om shanti shanti shantihi. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.